Hi everyone, this is Mr. Flamingo. Happy Friday to you all. I'm hoping this video works and that we can go through this lecture. If you remember last time we did chapter 51, which is on animal behavior. So what I'm going to talk about very briefly is, what are the types of animal behavior? How do they learn this behavior? And as we study it, as most we do as biology, is like, what is it and why is it that way? So this first slide we talked about last time. I looked up the pronunciation. This is ethology, study of animal behavior. And behavior, the definition of what is behavior, it's what does an animal do and how does it do it? It's a result of both genetic and environmental factors. So the story I was trying to tell you last time was, if you found a missing wallet, would you turn it in? Would you keep it for yourself? Well, it's not just because of genetics and it's not just because of how you're raised. It's actually a combination of both. Both are essential for survival and reproduction. And really, your behavior of an animal species over time is based on natural selection. So a whole species can have the same behavior based upon natural selection. So if I move on to the next slide, behavior has what they call proximate and ultimate causes. So proximate, if you think about it, means like the immediate cause, or like right now, what caused that? So if you did something right now, why did you do that? So it's how an animal behaves, and it's focusing on like the immediate causes of behavior. Well, for example, ultimate cause means, in the big picture, why does an animal behave as it does? Like evolutionary wise, like why did it behave that way? Okay. So here I have an example for you. If I switch slides, these are two fish. They're called sticklebacks. And you notice that what's so special, or the most striking feature of these sticklebacks, is they have red bellies. The behavior is that a male stickleback fish attacks other male sticklebacks that invade its nesting territory. So the question is, why does it do that? Why does it attack other male sticklebacks that invade its nesting territory? Well, the proximate cause, remember proximate, we're talking about the immediate cause? Well, immediately it sees a red belly, so it's a sign stimulus, or a stimulant, that says like, oh, this person is aggressive, or this guy is bad news, or it's terrible. So that's why the fish attacks. That's the immediate cause, it sees red. The ultimate cause, or like the big picture, by chasing away other male sticklebacks, a male decreases the chance the eggs laid in his nesting territory will be fertilized by another male. So big picture, it attacks other red male sticklebacks because it lessens its ability to reproduce, or it has less chance to have offspring if there's another male there. So that's what I mean by comparing a proximate cause to an ultimate cause. Behavior, as I mentioned, is a result from both genes and environmental factors. So I don't know if you guys have heard of the term nature versus nurture before, like which one is a focus, like is it nature, or especially for humans, is it nature, is it nurture? In biology, it is both genes and the environment that influence behavior. So you don't have to worry about is it one or the other. Innate behavior is developmentally fixed. So I don't know if you know what the term innate means, but it's natural. Okay, it means it's unlearned behavior. So it's a behavior that you act and do, but you never really learned it. It just sort of happened. It's called, another way to term it is environmental indifference, where the same way, that behavior is performed the exact same way by all members of the species. Doesn't matter who you are, they have the exact same process. So it's another a key term that you need to know is called a fixed action pattern. Fixed meaning like it's the same. It's innate behaviors that exhibit unchangeable sequences carried to completion, and it's triggered by some sign stimulus. So based on some sign, they all do the same thing. And this ensures that activities essential to survival are performed correctly without practice. So again, the ultimate reason why animals do certain things is to ensure survival, or that their species survive. So this little side picture, I don't know if you see this geese, but an egg basically like rolled out or fell out of the nest. And no matter where the geese is, in different parts of the world, they have this innate ability, or this behavior that they all do, is that they have this natural sense of, they take their head and basically roll the egg back to its nest. So every geese in this species does the exact same thing. They even did a study where they replaced the egg with a ball, and naturally that's what they did. It was what they call innate behavior. So again, with the stickleback example, talking about the ultimate causes of things. So there are different types of fish. Can you see like letter B in this picture? You'll see there are 4 different types of body shapes and different types of species that have this red belly, and the one at the top doesn't. So the question is, that I posed to you, that I would have posed to you in class is, how did all of a sudden these animals or these fish, how did they all of a sudden get red bellies, And, the ultimate cause is that at some level, it probably helped them survive or help their species survive so that only those with red bellies ever survive and those without red bellies, I guess they eventually died off. Movement, so in terms of behavior, like what causes animals to move, there's 2 types. Well, actually, there's 3. Here's 2 on this slide. One is called kinesis. So we're talking about a simple change in activity or turning rate in response to into a stimulus. So a simple change or activity. So this one is a sow bug. This particular bug reacts to humidity very strongly. So in this case, I know there's this winding path, but ultimately why they do that is because they respond very quickly to humidity. Very similar to, like, you could say how humans, like, when it's hot outside, I know in your videos you said you hate extreme heat. Naturally we just go to the shade. I mean, it's a simple change to a response to a stimulus. And taxis is an automatic movement, oriented movement, positive, like towards or away from a stimulus. Phototaxis, photo meaning light. Chemotaxis, chemo meaning like a chemical, and geotaxis, geo meaning earth. So these type of things, light, chemicals, or the earth, can direct somebody into this one. So this little picture, this example is a trout. Because the current is facing him, he or she is more likely to get food. So it automatically moves in this direction because, naturally, that's how it's going to survive and that's how it's going to get food. And the third type of directed movement is called migration. I'm sure all of you are familiar with migration or migratory animals. So what causes birds to migrate, penguins to migrate, stuff like that. It could be the sun, the cue or the sign stimulus could be the sun. It could be the stars, the magnetic field, maybe some landmarks. Migration, a whole gigantic move from a species because of one of these stimuli. And the last thing we're going to talk about, oh no, this isn't the last thing we're going to talk about, sorry. One of the things we're talking about is, communication signals. So we talked about very briefly when I saw you guys in classes, how do they communicate? So sometimes you think, those of you that have dogs, you mentioned in your videos, like, do they have a dog language? Do they understand each other? They may or may not. Here are some things that ways that animals do communicate. One of them is called pheromones. And hopefully some of you have heard of pheromones. I'm going to attach an article for you guys to read about pheromones. I think you'll find very interesting. But for those of you that don't know what pheromones is, there are chemicals that are released by one member of the species and it affects or changes the behavior of another member of the species. But the reason why it's so important that people care about pheromones is they say, like, humans also have pheromones. An example of pheromones, if you see in the bottom left corner, here's an example of fruit flies. So there's a 3-step process in the courtship behavior. So if a dude is really liking this girl, this is how they do courtship for the fruit flies. So you might see this, you see this bee with like this halo. It's releasing chemicals into the air. It's releasing pheromones. These pheromones attract males, so the one on the top right is now attracted because he gets that scent or gets this chemical. So letter B, tapping. So the male basically, in response to the pheromones, uses its forearm and touches the bee. And that's sort of like a trigger, like, oh, I'm interested in you. And then C, like to sort of impress the women, they basically extend their wing and they sort of vibrate it. It's their version of singing. So this is essentially a way for sure that we know it's not talking, but these animals can actually communicate with each other. Another way is called visual signals. So I don't have a picture for you guys, but the mockingbird actually has like a white spot on its wings, and this warning flash, it's what it uses to gather its prey. So it eats like these birds, they eat like worms or bugs on the floor, and when the mockingbird is ready to eat, it opens its wings and shows these white patches on its wings, and it's sort of like a declaration that this is my territory, or I'm ready to eat. There's no real for sure way why they do that. Another hypothesis is that this white is so bright that the bugs like come out and have to like look at it, and then when they come out to look at it, then the bird eats them. Auditory signals, so you may have heard of blue jays or warblers, like they actually sing. That's another way of signal. And then the waggle dance of the honeybee. Some of these I have videos for you. I'll wait for you on Monday. But a bee, when it comes back from gathering food, what it does is that it flies like in a figure eight. And the way that it flies in a figure eight, it tells the bees, oh, it's in the north direction, oh, it's in the south direction, or it's like in this angle. So the bees actually have a communication where they dance in a figure eight, and the way that they dance shows the other bees where the food is. Pretty cool. Then this is the last thing we're going to talk about. It's called learning. So it's what I'm doing my doctorate program in, but it's also interesting for you guys. Like, how do animals learn? This is sort of the same way as like how do humans learn. So we're going to look at in this picture we have 5 different ways that animals learn. Some of you may have heard these: imprinting, spatial learning, social learning, associative learning, and cognition. And pretty much humans or animals, we have the same type of experiences in terms of how do we learn. So number 1 type of learning is called habituation. This is a loss of responsiveness to stimuli that convey little or no information. It's a simple form of learning. So obviously habituation, the word habit, some things that you learn, basically just out of, it's a simple form of learning, like you just do it naturally. They actually said, I read an article recently, maybe I'll find it, but they say humans, for more than half of the time actually act in habituation, or they do things out of habit. So maybe think, for example, when you go home, like what are the types of things that you do? Like if you're Filipino, like myself, like we have to take off our shoes, or I'll put my backpack down somewhere. Like everything you do, like the way you brush your teeth and stuff like that, like you just do it out of habit. You just don't know how you learned it. Number 2 is called imprinting. You guys are going to love imprinting. I have some videos for you, but it's basically, there's a limited sensitive period in life where there's like a tiny window in our lives where we copy everything that either our moms or whoever is our primary caretaker, we copy every behavior that they do. So this is Konrad Lorenz. He's one of the most famous researchers in this field, but he raised baby geese, and eventually what they did, by him raising them, they were imprinted and did almost every exact same thing that Konrad Lorenz did. So in this picture, and again I have a video for you, like everywhere he went and when he walked, the geese did exactly the same thing. So everywhere he was going, the geese were following him. And it was a pretty cute video, so I'll show that to you when I see that. So this is imprinting. And some of you, I have another video too, like you may have heard of, different animals raised by a different species. Like I saw one of a lion that was raised by pandas. And all of a sudden, like the lion did the exact same thing like a panda does. So there's a small window in our lives where we copy everything that our primary caretaker does. Just to go back to the proximate and the ultimate causes. So, why do geese follow their mother? Proximate cause, like, the immediate cause is because the mom is walking and calling them. The geese is walking and making sound. So, like, of course the geese are going to follow. But the ultimate cause, we're talking about evolutionary causes. Like, maybe those that follow the mom get more care, get more food, more likely to live. So the geese that follow, they're more likely to live and then, continue the species. The bad side of imprinting is that it poses problems for, the wrong kind of imprinting. Like mother geese to baby geese is good, but if they follow something else like Konrad Lorenz or something that's not of their same species, that's cause for concern. So for example, this one, it says pilot wearing crane suit acts as a surrogate parent to teach young whooping cranes a migration route. So the problem is that if, a primary caretaker is lost or you have a wrong caretaker, like they could learn wrong behavior. So this is sort of interesting that they took a plane, made it look like a crane, and it acted like a parent to show them like where you're supposed to migrate. Spatial learning, so it's a type of learning based on your location. Cognitive map, an internal representation of spatial relationship among objects and animal surroundings. So essentially they sort of learn a location very well so that when they go into new locations they sort of act the same way. This is an example of a bird, and they use spatial maps, or again these locations, so they know where the nuts are, where their food is, depending on where, no matter what forest or wherever we put these birds in. Also, some organisms move in response to a recognized object or environmental cue. So, for example, this, I don't know what this is, maybe it's a wasp, but it notices all these like pine cones or like these little things, and they notice that if there is a circle of them, like, oh, there must be a nest there. And for example, so they automatically go towards wherever these circles is. So if you look at the bottom picture, even though there's no nest in the center of this circle, like its natural cue, what it learned is like, oh, every time I see the circle, there must be a nest there. So that's why this is a way of learning as well. Sorry, three more. Associative learning is the ability to associate one stimulus with another. So these monarchs, what they do is they associate some things with a bad taste so that when they see something very similar, they don't want it anymore. So it's hard to see picture, but what I'm saying is that, say for example, you personally, you eat something orange and it's very disgusting, right? You're like, oh, this orange thing is this, it's, or green things, very like green, like jellies, or like, oh, it's disgusting, right? So now, every time you see green food, you're like, oh, I'm never going to eat it again. That's what you call associative learning. You learn because it's from a very similar experience. Classical conditioning, again, I have good videos of this, but it's an arbitrary stimulus associated with a particular outcome. So this one is Pavlov's dogs. We'll talk about this later, but it's pretty cool because you can condition somebody to, like, if I ring a bell and I give you food, or every time I ring a bell I give you food, and then so a dog like salivates. So now, since I've conditioned him, now every time I ring a bell, even though I don't have food, the dog will be naturally trained to salivate. Another type of associative learning is called operant conditioning. It's also called trial and error. So every time they try something and try something and try something, eventually they learn the behavior. So you may notice here on the bottom right corner, like I guess this one was stung by like a porcupine. So now it sort of learns how not to do something anymore. So it can both be a reward and a punishment. Again, trying to speed this along. Cognition, the ability of an animal's nervous system to perceive, store, process, and use information. So what we do as humans, or higher level learning animals, they use something called cognition, or we problem solve. So here are some examples of, here's I guess this is a monkey trying to get food. So it's learned how to use a rock to sort of break things. And then here's a bird with a long beak, problem solving to figure out like how to get the food. So this is what they call cognition. And the last one is called social learning, learning by observing others. So vervet monkeys learning correct use of alarm calls based on other animals using alarm calls. There's not a lot of emphasis on social learning, but as time has gone on, they actually found that social learning is probably one of the more primary ways that which we learn. So that's it for this presentation. Again, I wish I was with you guys today. Hope you guys understood a lot of this, and then we'll talk about this again on Monday. All right, take care.